call and stand machine gunner George Coppard. Can you please tell us about your experience at the Somme, which you put in your gut with a machine gun at Canberra?
Concentrated machine gun fire from sufficient guns to command every inch of the wire had done its terrible work. The Germans must have been reinforcing wire for months. It was so dense that daylight could barely be seen through it. Through the glasses it looked like a black mass. The German faith in massed wire had paid off. How our planners imagined that Tommies, having survived all other hazards, and there were plenty crossing no man's land, would get through the German wire. Had they studied the black density of it through their powerful binoculars, who would have told that artillery fire would pound such wire to pieces, making it possible to get through? Any Tommy could have told them that fire lifts wire and drops it down, often worse tangled on the floor.
I believe that Haig also sacked an officer on one occasion after the officer ordered his men back when confronted with a gas attack without gas masks. He also suggested the number of men be shot for cowardice be increased in order to be improved the fighting spirit of the troops.
Retreat in the face of the enemy is cowardice. There can be no exceptions. I had to think of morale.
I'm not sure how sending men to certain death would improve morale. We now call David George, the point to his wartime Prime Minister, to the stand. As Prime Minister, what was your opinion of Douglas Haig's ability?
He was intellectually and temperamentally unequal to the command. He had a long training on lines which were irrelevant to this war, and was not blessed with any of the elements of imagination or personal magnetism, which has enabled great leaders to inspire multitudes with courage.
Can you point to any specific examples that demonstrate his incompetence?
At the Battle of the Somme, he introduced our new secret weapon, the tank, at far too early a stage in totally unsuitable conditions and in insufficient numbers. The use of them achieved nothing and gave away the element of surprise.
And how did Haig respond when things did not go to plan on the Somme?
He just kept on insisting on suicidal frontal attacks. Just one more push, he kept saying, and we will roll up the enemy. He was like the blind king of Bohemia at Crécy.
And did he drive back Germans and roll up the defensive positions?
He did not. Many of our troops were mowed down before they even arrived at their own frontline trench. He repeated all of these mistakes the following year at Passchendaele, despite the fact that it was obvious that the weather was going to break. He persisted with the attack, and our lads became sitting targets as they tried to move forward in a waterlogged landscape that became an impassable swamp.
So why did you not replace him?
I was leading a coalition government. If I quarrelled with the commander-in-chief, my opponents would have used this as an excuse to get rid of me. Haig also had the ear of the king, and even used his influence with the king to have himself promoted to war leader in the first place. Besides, there was no one else.
There was no one else. We would like to present Haig's military record as Exhibit 5, an exemplary record that speaks for itself. We now call L. Haig to the stand. L. Haig, what do you say to the accusation that you recklessly engaged in suicidal frontal assault?
There was no alternative but to wear the enemy down. We achieved this goal at the Somme, and the enemy remained on the back foot for the rest of the war. I admit that I should have taken the weather into consideration at Passchendaele, but we did achieve our objective. We gained the strategic ridge above the town of Ypres.
But that was the only small part of the battle plan. It was only accomplished after months of fighting at the cost of 80,000 dead and 230,000 wounded. Furthermore, it was recaptured by the Germans in the spring.
We did lose many men, but so did the enemy. This was never going to be a war where one side won a resounding victory. The morale of our troops never wavered, and we succeeded outlasting the enemy and wearing them down. I have been credited with winning the final victory in 1918.
Douglas Haig, you persist in arguing you were fighting a war of attrition, but you rewrote sections of your diary to conceal from history that you believed that the individual battles you fought in would lead to the breakthrough and an immediate victory. I put to you that you changed your argument when confronted by failure.
I admit to a certain optimism at times, but my underlying belief was that this was going to be a long struggle. My hand was largely forced by the pressure placed on us by French for constant relief on the Western Front.
Yet you persisted with the senseless attacks even after the Germans had given up their assault on Verdun. It would seem that, contrary to the evidence, you maintained the belief that cavalry would win the war and the machine gun was a weapon of little consequences. Did you not make the following statements? Success in battle depends mainly on morale and determination. The way to capture machine guns is by grit and determination. The machine gun is a much overrated weapon.
I was not unfamiliar with the technological innovations and encouraged their use. In the course of the war, we underwent a military transformation and became the most mechanized force in the world.
All sides underwent a learning curve, but you slowed down the process with your traditional prejudices that discouraged innovation. You maintained an ethos of the army that emphasized the offensive spirit of the infantry being the most important aspects of the battlefield. The lessons of the Russo-Japanese War ignored. You failed to appreciate the nature of the trench warfare, the deadly effect of the machine gun, and remained convinced of the importance of cavalry.
You failed to recognise the military changes I implemented from the lessons learnt on the Somme at Vimy Ridge. For example, we built tunnels to protect troops moving up the line and lessen the bombardment to make the enemy believe that we were moving the attack elsewhere. I also made greater use of the creeping barrage and succeeded in integrating infantry, artillery, armour and aircraft into a winning operational method in 1918.
You appear to be taking credit for the actions of the field commanders such as Herbert Plummer, Arthur Currie and John Monash. After the war, did you not state, I quote, "Aeroplanes and tanks are only accessories to the men and the horse"?
Yes, but I'm also saying that I was supportive of those field commanders who had an excellent grasp of the new military concepts that were being developed.
But you also supported dubious commanders such as Ian Hamilton, Alimer, Hunter Weston and Herbert Gough. You continue to pursue the misguided idea of pursuing a breakthrough deep in the enemy territory that was beyond the mobility and range of your artillery.
You forget the decisive operations of 1918 and the fact that we won the war.
We are not disputing the outcome of the war. We are affirming the belief that you were responsible for the prolonging the war and that many men lost their lives unnecessarily because of your decisions.
I now call a halt to proceedings. I would ask the members of the tribunal to consider the evidence and inform the court of their verdict. Members of the jury, how do you find the defendant?
We find the defendant not guilty.
Delightful! Yes!